Hello everyone, this is Sunny, and I'm coming to you with Sweet Insomnia, a Jeff the Killer X-Reader by xXDarkQueenXxRei. We're going to be starting off with Nightmare 17, Recall. Ever since you got tangled in the web of your wonderland, you always asked why things would happen and why they never worked in your favor. Was the world out to get to you? What did you ever do to deserve the fate that was on your back? There was a cliff that you knew very well, and it was small and weak, but it meant a lot more to you. It symbolized your entire past that was chipped from the storage depths of your mind. That cliff always gave you the answers to your questions, much like a shooting star would. The clouds in the night sky would speak to you through pictures, the wind in the air would help the souls of your sins whisper their concerns to you, and the trees would sway as if they were dancing and humbly asking you to join. Was it peaceful? You didn't know. It was more like a time of complete neutral. Your levels would equal out at the cliff and almost compose a harmony of life inside of your brain. It was a place where nothing else existed. And there was a time on that cliff that a creature stepped out of the shadows hidden beyond the woods and crept up on you. Its scythe claws almost had you in its grasp, but you managed to escape and the clock struck 0. You later found out what the creature was and why it was after you. Happy of your findings, you decided to sleep again, thus ending the reign of insomnia that had spread upon your heart. And there was one night that the creature came to visit you again. You knew not of its true intentions, so you scrambled in fear and referred back to your guardian. You knew what fate was doing. There was a wolf trying to eat you away and stand over your rotting corpse, and it wanted to feed its own hunger. It didn't even acknowledge yours. That is, until you strummed a loose string on the cannibal's symphony. After that day, you fell in love with the big bad wolf. You slowly helped it realize that not everyone in the world was out to get it. You were able to keep it secret just as it was able to keep yours from you. Whenever it would go on its own and relieve the stress from its burden by falling down its old level, you would stand waiting for it to come back and wipe the lust from its eyes once more. You thought you had taken all the sin out of the animal. You thought you had led the new wolf down a new path. You thought that you could trust the wolf, but the wolf bit you in the back and you didn't even know you were bleeding. In fact, you had been draining red since the day you had met that wolf. And they always say, if it hurts, it's healing. But you didn't feel any pain. You suffered in bliss. The wolf was gone from your mind. It was almost as if it was never there. Yet you still walked on the same path as it before and tried to deliver a package of peace to the old cliff. Did you let the world slip away, or did the wolf? The cliff wasn't able to answer that question, for your story in the rabbit hole was not over. The anticipation and interest was stripped from your body, and you couldn't get back to the real world without curiosity. The wolf returned once again, but this time it had the mask of a paradox rather than a paradox of a mask. It was there when you needed it, waiting for you to return from slumber with fresh needs and wants. It vowed to give you everything and anything, even though it was on the other side of the cliff the whole time. The wolf taught you how to trust, it taught you how to breathe, it taught you how to love. And then you remembered the deceit that you had been gifted with when you were reunited with the scar on your back. Revenge flashed through your mind, but you were scared to commit. You tried so hard to forgive the wolf while it begged for your forgiveness. It refused to even sleep, knowing that you doubted its love. But nothing it did could completely erase the lust that had been shifted onto you. You were given the opportunity to fill the last space in your notebook for good. With just one sin, you could save yourself and the wolf from so many others. But you didn't know if one choice could outweigh the other. You desperately tried to find your way into the neutral peace of purgatory, but the clock was ticking faster than usual. You had a plan, a very good one. That would be the breaking point of your journey. Your life depended on this plan, but this plan depended on the wolf's life. If only you could find a way back to the cliff, and what a shame you didn't even have a trace of that memory left in your system. It was disguised by the main enemy, the one you had seen before as a friend. And you couldn't find an answer to your question, so it was that when you made the worst mistake of your life. You followed through with your plan of revenge and tried to solve the problem using your own hands. Even though you didn't pull the trigger, the blood was still drowning your shoes. And within the last seconds of countdown, you felt the bucket of guilt pour out all the shame to run down your back like it knew its defined path. The shield in your eyes became loose, and you finally saw the world for how it was. Light shone down to spotlight your wrongdoing as a slideshow of your game played. You tried to replace yourself with an antagonist, but the chains on your skull were made out of dishonesty. And sadly, your love's deceit wore off on you. The wolf, now beaten, bruised, and innocent, was about to pay for your sins. So you prayed to the Reaper and you sold your soul. The clock on the wall started ticking again, but this time it had no end. And the wolf ran off like the Cheshire cat and found its way back into your mind. Nightmare 18 reduced. You were snapped out of your daze as you realized that the silence had lasted long enough and Jeff's hand was getting colder. You were ready for the blood to hit your face, but it never did. You shot your lids open and looked over at him. He was staring at the center of the table with the widest eyes a human could possibly have. He had the most fearful expression written all over his face, and his grip on the gun was getting lighter. Now you've ruined the fun, Smiley muttered. The bullet had just grazed Jeff's hair. If his hand hadn't been as shaky as it was, there's a high probability that he would have been dead. You were so relieved to see that you didn't have that much guilt left in your system. Am I dead? Jeff asked while holding on to the same expression. No, you're not, the doctor said. So we'll just end the game here. Smiley stood up and left the kitchen immediately. You heard the door slam down the hallway and a couple bangs from his room. He seemed extremely mad. It was almost like his plans were thrown back into his face. And for a second, victory flashed in your mind, but you quickly shut away the image as you remembered that you didn't have only one enemy, and Smiley wasn't done with you yet. Wyan, Jeff mumbled with a monotone cry. He started to squeeze your hand tighter as the gun fell onto the floor. I almost just died, Wyan. You nodded as you started to cry again. I almost left you alone with that man, he stuttered. I was almost the cause of your death, too. He caused someone else's demise as well? Was he not telling you something? He was supposed to have major memory loss. Did you remember something? You asked, getting completely off topic. Jeff wiped his eyes as he brought you in for a hug, and it seemed like he didn't plan on letting go. I saw something when I woke up, he whispered. I saw a picture of something. You hugged him tighter and pulled back after a moment to see his face. I saw a picture of a boy that looks kind of like me. He rambled in an uneasy voice. And I was stabbing him. You widened your eyes. Who is he? You asked. I don't know, he muttered as he shook his head. His eyes began to shine with water again. Listen, you said. We can take this chance to run. We can talk about everything someplace else, okay? You didn't have to keep playing in that stupid tournament of death if you ran away. Smiley was obviously flustered, so it was the perfect opportunity to fly past the security. You wouldn't get another chance. Jeff nodded and started to stand up, but it was obvious that he was still weary over that experience. You feared that it would scar him for life, though it could very well do the same to you. You took his hand and led him over to the front door, and you reached up and undid the locks that were holding the frame in place. With Jeff's help, you pulled off the wooden planks connected to the wall. You heard a creak down the hallway, so you quickly swung that front door open as wide as it could go, and you took off running. You didn't care about where you were going or what you might encounter. All that mattered was that Jeff was running right by your side, and you were free from the pit of torment. The trees darted past your face as the red moon in the sky began to enlarge itself. It dyed all the leaves in crimson, but the color faded as you got farther away from the cabin of death. The scarlet in Jeff's jacket was the only remaining evidence of bloodshed. And you stopped in your tracks. Why did you stop? Jeff asked, looking back at you. People will stare at this if we have it, you mumbled, and he slid off his jacket and threw it on the ground. Let's hurry, I think I hear someone, he replied. You both started to run again, but you secretly turned back and retrieved the syringe from the hoodie pocket. You didn't know when you would use it, but you knew that it had some sort of deeper meaning to you. You quickly caught up with Jeff as he neared the main road. Stress left your mind at the sight of it, and the light of day was shining upon the very opening of the dark woods. You could see the glittering rays casting an epiphany on the entire situation. And you felt pure and stable again. Should we tell the police? Jeff asked as he stood at the barrier between the good side and the dark side. No, you said. That would only give Smiley a lead on us. You gazed into his crystal-colored eyes and took his hand, and he smiled at you, and faced the open road once again. That was it. Red pill or blue pill, it was your choice. You stepped onto the pavement as the final nail unscrewed itself and fell back into the toolbox. It wasn't completely obliterated, but just saved for later. You were extending the deadline of the project. The sky opened up and let out a heavy rain, and you had never understood what freedom was until you experienced a time without it. That rain felt so real, and it was free. It had a life of its own in its little cycle. You felt one with the rain and the sky, free and without misery. We're okay now, Jeff sighed, right? Of course, you smiled. Everything is perfectly fine now. That is the end of those two chapters. The chapter after that one is Nightmare 19 Radiance. Let me know how you guys felt about those two, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.